By 1857, the East India Company had spent decades systematically swallowing independent Indian territories. Through creeping legal mechanisms like the doctrine of lapse, they annexed local kingdoms the moment a ruler died without a male heir. This created a deep, simmering resentment across the social, economic, and political landscape of the subcontinent. The breaking point arrived with a single piece of military equipment, the new Enfield rifle. To load it, soldiers had to bite open a grease-coated paper cartridge. When rumors spread that this grease was made of cow and pig fat, it was seen as a direct, irreconcilable violation of both Hindu and Muslim religious beliefs. At this exact moment, the company was highly vulnerable. They relied heavily on Indian soldiers to enforce their rule, with roughly 150,000 sepoys enlisted in their ranks. They had heavily armed the very population they were offending. The cartridge issue acted as the final catalyst. Decades of silent, wide-ranging oppression finally found a physical focal point, triggering an explosive armed uprising. The earliest flashpoint occurred on April 8th at Barrackpore. An Indian sepoy named Mangal Pandey struck out in a solitary act of fury against his British officers. He was executed, becoming the rebellion's first martyr. But a month later, on May 10th, the situation in Meerut erected far beyond a single protest. What started as an isolated spark turned into a massive, coordinated mutiny. Sepoys broke open the jails, engaged in violent clashes, and torched British structures, completely shattering the company's local control. The mutineers knew they needed a political figurehead to legitimize their cause, so they immediately marched on Delhi. There, they drafted the elderly Mughal emperor Bahadur Shah Zafar, declaring him the leader of the rebellion. The contrast between the rebellion's icons was stark. Mangal Pandey had provided the youthful, aggressive catalyst, while Bahadur Shah II served as the aging, symbolic anchor drafted specifically to unite a wide array of factions. By installing an emperor, the sepoys forced a massive escalation. The British could no longer dismiss the events as a localized military riot. They were now facing an organized war for the sovereignty of India. The rebellion rapidly breached Delhi's borders, spreading aggressively across Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, and Bihar. Key administrative centers fell in rapid succession. The mutiny overwhelmed British garrisons in Kanpur, Lucknow, and Jhansi, creating a multi-front crisis for the British. But these regions weren't fighting under a single unified constitution. Their leaders had diverse personal motives. In Kanpur, Nana Sahib fought because the British had denied his royal pension. In Bihar, the 80-year-old Kunwar Singh took up arms specifically to protect his ancestral lands. Look closely at the ruins of the Lucknow residency in this photograph. It shows the destructive power and duration of the sieges these leaders orchestrated. Here, Begum Hazrat Mahal mounted a strategic, fierce defense of her realm against prominent British commanders like Colin Campbell. Yet this localized heroism exposed a critical vulnerability. Without a unified central command, leaders like Hazrat Mahal and Kunwar Singh were fighting isolated wars against a deeply connected and resourced British Empire. In Jhansi, the resistance took the form of direct combat. Rani Lakshmi Bai personally led her forces onto the battlefield, fiercely resisting the brutal siege commanded by British officer Sir Hugh Rose. In Gwalior, Tantia Tope took a different approach. Recognizing the sheer military superiority of the British, he avoided pitched battles and pivoted to elusive, unconventional guerrilla warfare. His tactics kept the British forces chasing him long after other regions had fallen. Tantia Tope was the very last major leader captured, marking the operational end of the armed resistance. Despite exceptional individual bravery and brilliant unconventional tactics, the Indian forces were too fractured. They simply could not outlast the industrialized, unified military logistics of the British Army. The British retaliation was ruthless. Led by commanders like John Nicholson and Hugh Rose, the brutal suppression left over 10,000 sepoys dead, bringing the mutiny to an official close by June 1858. But the conflict revealed a striking irony. The East India Company won the battles, but they lost their empire. The British Parliament looked at the sheer scale of the chaos and determined the company was dangerously incompetent to manage the subcontinent. The swift response was the Government of India Act 1858. This law instantly abolished East India Company rule, transferring absolute administrative power directly to the British Crown. The violent sacrifices of the sepoys forced a permanent geopolitical reset. They achieved what decades of diplomacy could not: the complete erasure of the world's most powerful corporation. The British immediately redesigned the administration. They created the new position of Secretary of State for India and rebranded the title of Governor-General to the grander Viceroy. The man tasked with managing this transition was Lord Canning. He went from being the last Governor-General of the company to the first Viceroy of the Crown, ushering in a cold, bureaucratic policy of cooperation. How history classifies these events depends heavily on who is writing it. British officials like John Lawrence dismissed the uprising as a simple military mutiny. But Indian nationalists, most notably V.D. Savarkar, defined it as the First War of Independence. While the 1857 revolt did not immediately liberate India, it successfully forged a collective national consciousness. It proved that unified resistance was possible, laying the foundation for the nation's ultimate path to freedom.